The Changing Face of Farming in Fredericktown is a documentary produced by students in Carolyn Grimm's journalism class for a Save Our History grant received by the Fredericktown Area Historical Society from the History Channel. This ongoing project includes taped interviews with area farmers and their families about the changes that have come about during the last century in farming, technology, lifestyles, and customs. It features recorded memories and anecdotes about life on the farm. The Fredericktown Save Our History grant is one of only 11 such grants given for the 2008-2009 school year. Save Our History is an Emmy award-winning strategic philanthropic initiative of history that launched in 1998, designed to further historic preservation and history education. The program supplements the teaching of history in America's classrooms, educates the public on the importance of historical preservation, and motivates communities across the country to help save endangered local historic treasures.
Family farms in rural areas such as Fredericktown have been around for 100 years. Through depression, wars, and the rise of corporate farming, how did they survive? In this documentary, we will trace changes in farming over 100 years and explore what kept these small farmers in business despite the many obstacles. Eventually, we will also look at everyday tasks on a modern farm, as well as the rise of farmers markets, farming societies, and specialty farms. And finally, organizations such as the Grange, 4-H, and FFA.
What's your favorite part about farming? Like,
Oh, just farming, just a way of life that's hard to beat. It's in your blood. It has to be in your blood. You have to be dumb. No, not dumb. You don't have to be. It's a way of life. It's a rough way. I mean, there's easier ways of making a living, but I wouldn't know. I've enjoyed it all. I'd do it again if I. I mean, it's been a good life, and I've enjoyed it. And my grandsons, they're interested in it, and that makes me happy that they want to continue on.
I had to learn all this, and I did. I learned everything, so. And I miss farming. And I miss my calves. I wish I could still feed my calves, you know. And the cows, well, I even helped my husband milk cows. And that was exciting, I tell you. And you have to watch they don't kick you or nothing, you know. But, and they seem to understand me. Sometimes I talk German to them, you know. But it's because when you're around, like when you feed the calves, when you raise the little calves, and I speak to them, see, you don't just go in there and feed them. I talk to them, and so they get used to the way you are, you know. And so we raised all our cows that we milked, and so they all knew me, but it was fun.
It's a good life. The only thing that comes close to it was teaching. My teaching career was really fun, but farming, as I think I mentioned, it's a good place to raise kids, and they can learn that work ethic that our generation thinks it's important. I don't know how the next generation feels about it, but a good work ethic and good place to live.
I just enjoy working the land and being outside, and decisions that are made. They're my consequences if they're the wrong decision or not, and I just like being my own boss.
I enjoy the outdoors. I enjoy being independent, farming, working by myself. It's a great, you know, it has its ups and downs, but in the end, it's a great occupation to have.
Dean's the fifth generation.
Yeah.
The fifth generation on his farms, yeah. It started with my husband's great-grandfather lived here, and that was back in the early 20s. So it's been in the Robinson family for probably over 100 years. And the house was built in 1889 by Isaac Robinson. And he they lived here, and then it's been handed down from generation to generation. I have a deed that was signed by Andrew Jackson for 80 acres, but then the farm is originally was at 500 acres. The four brothers, three brothers were in the dairy business with their dad, and then the other brother had a farm of his own, so it reduced down when they gave him his farm, and so we ended up with 350 acres.
Well, we ended up buying 2 of the farms
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So, about how many acres is it today?
350.
Most of them had, for instance, when I was little, we had 4 Guernseys here that we milked. That was for the milk. The chicken house was full of chickens. Okay, if you saw the picture out there, the sheep
Yes, right.
pastured here, so they sold the wool. We never had pigs. Mother didn't. I don't know why we never had pigs, but Mother was never gonna have pigs. When we started the dairy down there, when Bill Reed came, it was all done with stanchions, you know, with still the big mug jug. Then they made them go to the bulk tanks. So then that's when they put in the milking parlor. We know they had their horses.
Because we have the photos.
We have the horses. We know everybody had their work horses before
Yes.
the tractors. You saw the condition of the road in front of the brick. And the thing that's interesting is how it has built up, which has brought water down into the house, because originally there would not have been water in the basement because the road was flat. So with time it's built up, so now we've got water coming off the road. So I would say we mainly had sheep, the chickens, you know, the Guernsey, we had the 4 Guernseys for that. But I would say every farm probably had some dairy cows. You know, you had your chickens because we sold eggs, because I used to help Grandpa get the eggs. The sheep, he sold the wool. I can remember when they'd come and shear them every year. So, you know, I would say most farms probably, and some probably had pigs for their, you know, to do their smokehouse hams. They both had outhouses. Had outhouses when I was little. The plumbing came in
Probably the
30, early 40s.
early 40s, late 30s.
How long have you been on this farm?
62 years. Right now. Right in the
And how did you get started farming here? How did you decide to come here?
Okay, we lived in Belleville, and used to be so many people would, I'd come home from work, and it'd be so many people be on our front porch, and I didn't like that. Probably it was 6 or 7 women on the porch, talked to my wife. When I come home from work, every day. We looked at a lot of farms, and I heard about this, and so we came to look at it. And we ended up here. The road used to go north. We put the road west or east, that way, that lane.
This was 175 acres.
Okay.
And of course, years and years ago, there was about 3 families made a living off of this. But nowadays, we farmed about 500 acres along, including this. And
As in right now?
no, years ago.
But did you really?
Yeah, years ago. And because 175 acres, even then, wouldn't hardly maintain. It's amazing how 3 families lived on it once, and now, of course, Jim farms 2,500 acres now, but at one time there was 2 houses over there. The big house was a double house, 2 families lived there, and then 1 family in the small house.
In 1820, the Shire family arrived into this unlikely mix of pacifists and abolitionists who were persecuted because of their humanitarian beliefs and war veterans who had been through hell. They bought land, cleared it with oxen and raised families, paid their taxes, grew the food and feed that launched the Industrial Revolution, fought and won wars, survived economic depressions, and brought this fledgling nation from poverty to world prominence. Dean Shira, one of a family of 6 boys and 5 girls, was born during World War II, just in time to see the draft horse being abandoned in wholesale lots after the war, as farm tractors replaced tanks rolling off our assembly lines.
Why did your family begin farming, and when?
Dad began farming when he got out of World War II, which would have been 1944. And I guess back then it's just kind of what everybody did. He grew up on a farm. He grew up with horses. Back in the 40s, things were starting to evolve from horses to tractors, and that's just what we've always done. Now, I am the only one in the family in farming. I have 3 brothers and a sister. They didn't really want anything to do with farming, even growing up.
This farm has been in the family for 96 years.
How many acres do you farm?
600.
How many acres do you guys own?
300. Most all of the 300 acres has been passed down generation to generation.
Basically all the farms up until the dairy was put in were pretty much the same. Like she was saying, it's all the animals and what you could, the number you could raise on what was cleared and what you could make off of that.
So it was all subsistence level.
Yeah,
So
if we ever got like an AP of this valley, where the houses are, it's all basically split up in the amount of land a man could probably handle in a year by himself.
Yep.
You know, 80 acres, 100 acres.
Size of your herd was determined by how much hay you could store.
So you see 4 Guernseys in your horses, probably had 2 horses, that's probably what you had.
Well, probably 2 work horses and then a cart horse.
We had 3 horse stalls out here.
Yeah. And then the stanchions were south of that, and they had 4 of them. There were 4 stanchions, there were 4 Guernseys when I was here. So you milked, of course, it was all by hand.
And we farmed with horses and then small tractor, and then we had a small tractor the first, and the first 2 years my dad planted the corn with the horses on this farm where we're at, and we cut the corn and cut wheat and shocked it, and then we gradually got to tractors, bigger tractors, and the horses went by the wayside. And you know what thrashing is?
Tell me.
Well, you cut it in the field and it's put in bundles, and then you shock it and it dries out, and then the thrash machine, they have a what you call thrash machine ring. So many farmers help one another, and they blow the straw in the barn or make a straw stack. The combine took that out of the picture, and that's what you call progress. We were Amish actually, but not Amish. 1951 or 2 is when we started getting the machinery together to away from the horses.
How long has the farm been in the family?
Well, your father, probably 125 years plus.
Has the property always been as large as it is today, or has land been purchased?
No, it's always been the same size.
What's the most historical part of the property?
Well, the farm was originally homesteaded by a family that came in here from Virginia. He was a Revolutionary War veteran, brought his family and his slaves in here, and he was homesteaded 160 acres. And somewhere just to change property lines, it finally ended up being 175 acres.
Do you know what homesteaded means? It was given to the, it was a land grant given by the government for anyone who had been in the service. And we have a deed signed by Monroe.
James Monroe.
James Monroe. And that's homesteading when it's, so. And then the Brown family then purchased it from this man that the land had been given to.
Is your farm considered a century farm?
It is a century farm, and it was in 1997. There were you made your own. You applied for it to a magazine called Country Journal, and we filled out the application along with other people. And in our district, we won. There were 5 districts in the state of Ohio, and we won from our district. And then we won overall. And so in 1997, we were awarded the state century farm. And it was kind of a nice honor. One of the stipulations was it had to be continuously farmed for 100 years by the family. And we could qualify for that. And I don't know what other qualification, that was the main qualification.
That was the main qualification.
But we were honored over at the Ohio State Fair, and then we went down to the Farm Science Review, and the family went, and that was kind of a nice honor.
But my father owns a farm that's been in the family ever since it was land granted back in the mid-1800s.
Can you talk more about that?
That farm is a farm that my grandmother was born on, and it's a farm that we have had, like I said, in the family since the mid-1800s. It's about 240 acres, about a third of it's woods, a third of it's pasture, and a third of it's cropland. And kind of a distinct aspect about it is it has an artesian well that's flowed through 3 centuries and nourished multiple generations of our family.
Which Charlie's family's down there too. They built the old stone house down there. It's still historic, but then this was homesteaded up here. The deed said 1835, and Andrew Jackson signed the original homestead deed at Chillicothe. Now I don't know where Jackson signed it or not, but his name's on the deed. And then this was land grant up here, the original land grant to the Hamiltons were the family, first family, and it was homesteaded to the Hamiltons, and then the Nichols came in. The next generation, or next family was, and then the Daniels from the Nichols. So it's been and this house is probably about 150 years old. But the house is the second house here, and the bricks were made here, right on the farm. And they tore the old first brick house down and then used the bricks in this house. So the bricks are several years old, and my family had it, and the Nichols, and then the Daniels came in, which is our tribe, and my dad had it, and I've had it for 50 years, and now my grandsons are running it right now, and I was hoping they would be here today. Originally, this was an orchard when they had an orchard here, and the deck, the widow's walk on this house is they had built that. They call it a widow walk, but they put it on there to raise bees, because it was an orchard and they wanted to keep the bees in the top of the house. I mean, but it didn't work. Bees would land out on the roof and burn to death. I mean, it never worked that way, but it was originally an orchard, and then the fruit they trucked to Mansfield with horse and buggy, I understand, to sell their wares. And it was several years orchard, and then we've been general farming mostly, and then I did dairy in my life. And now the boys have gone organic. It's an organic farm now, and we sell cheese and different products, but mostly cheese. They eat dairy.
Okay.
We fed everything. Back at that time, all farmers fed all their grain and all that. We had what they call granary. Every farm had a granary that they store the wheat and the oats in, and of course the barns are all high barns, big barns like those Mother and Dad had. You store the hay and the straw in, and livestock. We had all phases. Everybody had all phases of livestock. Everything. You had dairy cows, you had the hogs, and you had the chickens and the sheep up and down the road. Everybody did. Shared the sheep, yeah. Her dad did.
So what was that like?
Well, he would, gosh, I don't know how many within a day. He had what they call the shears, and they were his was on a gasoline motor. Today, they of course use the electric, but he would come and just shear the sheep. I mean, just shear the wool right off, and we store the, cart it up and then sell it. At that time, wool was a decent price. Today, it's just nothing, hardly. It's like everything else. You either go big or get out of it. And of course, people now that have sheep have a whole lot of sheep. And we had chickens. We had 700 chickens in the last. But nowadays, I mean, last year we couldn't get rid of the eggs because nobody wanted. I had 10 or 12 cases, and nobody wanted to stop and get that many. So, because that was just not enough.
So, I mean, that was a small amount?
Oh, yeah.
Huh, 700?
Now it's like 7,000. We had cage layers. They were like cages, and each chicken was in a separate cage.
Right.
We liked that because you could have more chickens, and yet the eggs were nice and clean, and they always got clean feed and clean water. We raised the hogs to sell.
Oh yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah. You had, what was it, 85?
About 80 sows at one time, and raised all the pigs to market.
But we baled straw from oats and from wheat. We baled different types of hay to feed the animals, and as I said, we had the corn for either ear corn or for ensilage. And most of it was stuff that we grew on the farm. We didn't have to go out and buy very many commodities at that time. And like I said, we had the milk. The meat that we got were from cows that weren't producing enough milk. And we occasionally had chickens, to have the eggs, and we had a garden. So a lot of that stuff we just produced on the farm ourselves.
Are there any historical connections to your farm?
Johnny Appleseed had heard from one of the local tribes that they were quite annoyed at the encroachment of the settlers coming out of Fort Frederick. So not Fredericktown, Fort Frederick. And there were 3 families who had moved into this valley. The ones that lived back where the Marin house is, who, to my knowledge, were named Marin. The Durbins, who lived up at this end of the valley. And the Poppins, who lived down in the middle, who again were strangely related to. So John, on his way from Mount Vernon towards Fort Frederick, he told all the white families in this valley that the Indians were planning an attack, and that they should go into the fort for security. Well, the Pophams and the Marins believed him, and went in, and the Durbins did not and were slaughtered, their children. And inside the cemetery, there are 4 headstones, 1 in each corner, 1 for each brother, 1 for each wife. And then there are 8 giant boulders, which are now partially buried around the outside, which are each of the children.
Jean Benson wrote, "It has been stated that on September 12, 1812, Johnny Appleseed traveled from Mansfield to Mount Vernon, approximately 30 miles, to warn settlers of an impending Indian uprising. One version of this story says that Johnny ran all the way, and another version says he rode a horse. At any rate, Johnny stopped and warned the settlers who lived near the Quaker meeting house, who then ran to the blockhouse in Fredericktown, which had been built for protection from the Indians. It appears that Johnny went directly past Jacob Burkholder's farm when it was owned by the Farquhars. 11 years later, Jacob Burkholder bought his land."
Are there any connections with your house and the Underground Railroad or anything of that sort?
We like to think so. We can't really document it, but it certainly would be on the route of the Underground Railroad. And we have lots of places that we think that they could have hidden the slaves. And that has kind of been a oral tradition that this house was on the Underground Railroad.
And I think the original homesteader turned his slaves loose, and probably there was some connection there.
About when during the Depression they put potatoes out in this field, and that's all they had to eat was potatoes. My mother hated potatoes because that's all she had to eat. Now his father was different. Whenever they worked, someone would give him a chicken. That's how they got paid during the Depression. So he didn't like chicken. His father. So mother's was potatoes, and you could probably talk to anybody that lived through the Depression, and there'd be something like that. But they grew potatoes out here and then grew the hay on top of it for the animals, but they would dig down and get the potatoes.
Did your farm go through the Great Depression?
This particular farm did not, but I remember when Dad was growing up. Dad was born in 25, so therefore, in the 30s he was young, but I do remember he talked about his grandfather lost a farm, his father lost a farm, and they decided that they would never lose another one. So from that point on, they didn't borrow money. If they didn't have money, they didn't do it. And they put money in the bank. So my grandfather died with the house falling down around him, but money in the bank, because he thought that's what was important.
Jean Benson wrote, "The Great Depression was hardly noticed by my parents. The farm supplied most of their needs at that time, and they simply lived as they always had."
I would have to say that it made it a greater challenge to, of course, I wasn't alive at that era, but from hearing the stories, it made a bigger challenge for them to farm, but being diversified as they were back in those times, like I said previously, having a chicken and a cow, and they could raise their own food so they could sustain themselves. Money was probably the biggest issue as far as being able to buy things. They just didn't have the money to do that. But they were able to sustain themselves.
78, that was the same year as the blizzard.
Right.
Did you have any problems with that?
Oh yeah.
With your milking or anything? How'd that go for you?
Well, we dumped milk, we drank milk, we ate milk. We had lots of milk. We gave milk away, but we were isolated, and the whole state was pretty much that year at that time. But we survived. We had to get rid of it, and it just shut us down. But we lived. We were able to survive. No electric. And we didn't have generators then to back up. We had to milk by hand, and that was a killer diller. So then you buy a generator, and I don't think we've ever really been in that disaster again like that. We have a standby generator, but we use it off and on, but not disaster. So yeah, it was quite effective. quite a time to go through.
Probably the most historical thing we have is the Greenville Treaty Line that borders the north edge of our farm, which was at one time the treaty line between the Indians were to the north and the white man was to the south.
Well, that field over there,
That one there.
that in there, was a whole lot of stumps in it. They didn't farm it. They must have run cattle in it one time. So I had, went to talk to Don Doherty, and I said, "You know how to use dynamite?" I said, "Yeah." So I went up to Ollisburg and bought a whole case of dynamite cans. And we started in that field, blowing all the stumps out. And a field back here, where they got in hay, that had a lot of big stumps around it. So we blew all them out. With horse scraper, I filled the places in. And then we did that. We found lots of arrowheads, buckets of them.
How has farming changed over the last 100 years?
Jean Benson wrote that Mom and Dad butchered and cured the meat from their own animals, and had their own eggs and chickens, made their own butter and lard, and had their own milk and canned and dried their own produce. They made sausage and smoked their hams. My mother still canned meat when I was growing up. Crocks were used extensively to keep food cold. They would put crocks of food in the water tank of the milk house. For a great many years, my parents spent only around $25 a year for necessities such as salt, pepper, sugar, spices, etc. They even raised their own wheat and would take it to Fredericktown to be ground into flour.
This one down here is a huge barn, all cleared timber, huge, and mortared in with pins.
Mm-hmm.
That barn, lower barn.
And how old is that one? Is that one the older barn?
Yeah, around in 1880, someplace like that, or someplace around 1880. That timber's in there like that.
They had all this land, but this was a head home, you know, this was where the folks that owned it lived, and she had men, she had made to help with cleaning and all, you know.
Did she?
Yeah.
This is one of the first houses in Knox County to have a bathroom.
Oh, good idea.
Also, it had a dumb waiter in there.
Okay.
Okay, you put
I
your
wouldn't be either.
you put your stuff in, what you like, butter and that kind of stuff, and you trip the rope, and the elevator went down with all that stuff in. You want it again, you pull this,
I'd
take
like
it
to
back
steam
up.
it all.
Really? So was that like to preserve it?
Yeah, keep it cool with somebody else.
So it was in the cellar?
Yeah. The back of this here was a log house, and the kids played in it. I was afraid to get hurt, so I tore that down. And
Oh,
there
was that
also,
ever cute? I shouldn't have been.
there was an outside oven out there.
Uh-huh.
They did their baking. I still got some of the stuff yet from it.
When we bought our first big John Deere tractor, which was a 730 John Deere, Dale's dad said, "You will never need a tractor that big." And we say now, if he can see what Jim's driving, he was just, and my dad the same way. It's just incomprehensible.
Want to tell you what's the difference between a family farm and what's happening today? Is this the family farm, all the family helped. Well, most family farms now are, most of the kids went away, there wasn't enough help, and the help that you have, you couldn't pay them very much, so they didn't stay. And the price of the milk and the price of the corn and all the things that we raised went down so much that we could hardly afford to pay our bills. And in the 80s, the interest went up so high, we almost lost our farm. You know, so and now that's why we had, you know, like on our road, how many farms did we had? And there are only 2 farms left. Now it's only 1 farm left that milks cows. But now it's like the whole family, aunts and uncles or whoever, you know, and the young kids don't want to do the hard work anymore, like what a farmer had to do, you know. And so they had to join with other farms and or quit milking or milking more cows to keep making a living.
What were the main animals grown or raised on the farm over the years?
Well, see, when I was a kid, my parents had a few dairy cows, a few hogs, a few sheep, a few chickens, because you were self-sustained. And then, as things changed, why, you either got larger in one animal production type or another. We finally ended up going all dairy, and the hogs and everything else went down the highway.
And Dad had an 18-stanchion dairy parlor. When he first started, he didn't have a big milk house or a bulk tank. He would pour the milk that he got from hand milking the cattle into big milk cans and drop them into a water bath. And then every day or two, the milk truck would come, pick up the cans, take them away, bring us back empties, and we'd continue the process. Then he got into using some automatic milking machines, but we never did go to a pipeline system. So we were always carrying milk from wherever the cow was being milked in the stanchion barn into the milk house. Eventually he built a block milk house and eventually put in a bulk tank. So we got away from the water bath and the individual cans. And typically he would milk 20 to 25 head of cattle. We usually had Guernseys and Jerseys, but then he went a little bit crazy and started trading horses for Ayrshire cattle, which were a lot crazier than other breeds. And so we had a few of those. Those are the ones that kicked us the most. And a couple of Holsteins, which we referred to as bucket washers, because they had such a high water content and a low milk fat content. But I always had an affinity for the Guernseys and the Jerseys. They were easy to take care of. They were small. They didn't give as much milk, but it was nice, rich milk. So growing up, I didn't know what it was like to have store-bought milk, we called it, because we always just used the milk off the farm. And you'd get a real thick layer of cream on the top, and Mom would skim some of that off to put in coffee or to make whipped cream or butter or things like that. But it was kind of neat to go to school and get store-bought milk because it was different. And when we would go to camp, we'd also get store-bought milk there. But in the early days, even they used cans of milk that they would put into a water bath.
The biggest change that you see today from 100 years ago is that the fields are bigger and there is very little contour farming done anymore. Contour farming was done in the past because you wanted small strips and everything was plowed every year because that was your weed control. That was your main weed control, was mowboard plow. In today's day and age, we have chemicals to control that. We use no-till. So this farm 50 years ago would have been all in little 2 and 3 acre strips. Now it's basically in 4 different fields.
Our food to the basement in the summer, our milk and butter and stuff, you know, we didn't have no refrigerator.
Well,
but that would be keep it cooler.
Then where he's setting was a windmill.
Oh, okay.
It pumped water up to that barn. Okay? Where that shed sat in there was a big watering trough. Down here on the other edge of this other shed was another watering trough. Down the barn was another. Okay? In the basement was a ram. That ram put water up in the house and for your toilet. Out here was a big cement trough where you put your cans in and your cream, everything. That windmill pumped that water all the time. That water out of there went to the watering trough down here. This up here fed that and fed this.
You pumped the water that covered that kept the can things
Yeah,
cold.
that run all the time.
Yes.
That was a great big cistern up in there. It was a huge thing. Was there. That windmill was pumping water. One of the blades come off, went through up there where my girls were sleeping.
Oh my word.
I thought they got cut, but they didn't. So, about 2 o'clock at night, when this all happened, I come down, I cut the windmill down with a crosscut saw.
You did.
Cut the thing down.
So it wouldn't happen again.
Yes, Mom.
You know, 100 years ago, that's pretty much what most everybody did. My great-grandfather was a farmer. My grandfather was a farmer. My dad was a farmer. It just kind of went through the generations.
Other things that we did on the farm, we raised crops. In the early days, we would typically have corn and soybeans and wheat, barley, sorghum. Most of those were used to be ground up into the cattle feed. We would pick corn on the ear rather than shelling it, store it away in the corn cribs, and then every so many weeks we'd load up the pickup truck with shelled corn and throw in some oats or whatever other grains we had depending on what we were feeding, take it into the feed store that my mother owned after she inherited it from my grandfather, Asa Workman, which was the Wayne Cash Feed Store on West High Street. And take the stuff in, grind it up, add molasses and other additives, bring it back and feed it to the cattle. We'd chop the corn that we didn't pick when it was green to make silage, put it in the silo, and part of my duty was to climb up the ladder. It was about a 30-foot silo, not a huge one, and we'd throw down ensilage and silage and feed it to the dairy cattle to help supplement their feeds. And
we don't have a real great economy right now. How has that affected?
Well, this organic is really, they seem to have money to buy it, and it's twice to 3 times more than the market. I wouldn't say twice or 3 times. I'd say twice the price of over the market, and so it's been good.
Okay.
And it's been strong. Even, you know, the economy's down, but they still, people want the organic cheese.
We had milk cows, then we went to some beef cows and the chickens, and the chickens fed and clothed our family.
Oh, that
We
was
sell the eggs, and then
Yes.
we got the groceries. And when the kids were complaining about having to help, well, I reminded them that their food and clothing was coming from those eggs. But
Well, everything's going to computers. You know, tractors have computers in them now, and I mean, you pretty much set the computer, and all you do is sit there. The tractor pretty much drives itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll never get to that point because that's not what we want. You know, we're just, in households, you know, we're a corporation. They're a family corporation. They're incorporated, but, you know, everybody has a lot of their records and stuff up on, you know, computers and their billing, and we just like to do it on paper. We get mad at the banks when they say, well, our computers are down, we can't do, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
my opinion is getting too sophisticated. You know, just go out, run the tractor, do what you did, you know, back 15, 20, 30 years ago, and get the job done.
Jean Benson wrote, according to various Knox County histories, it has been found that the Brooker and Lewis families came together to Knox County in 1810. Some say they were here before that time, as one Brooker male was the first white baby born in Liberty Township in 1807. At any rate, when the Ludwig sons first came to Pennsylvania to look at their Knox County land, they brought their families along. Consequently, they stayed only one night, and by noon the next day they were on their way back to Pennsylvania. They saw many Indians, heard the wolves howling, and the owls hooting. They agreed that with their wives to let the land go to the devil, and that they would return home, as they thought no one would, or ever could, live in the Owl Creek country because it was too far wild.
Well, the equipment my great-grandfather would have used would have been horses and a lot of physical labor. I mean, agriculture then was a very physical occupation. Today we have 12-row corn planters that are pulled by 150 horsepower tractors, and we use auto guidance, and the only auto guidance they had then was a horse that could walk down the road straight. So it's significantly different, and it's a lot more technology-based than labor-based. And in those days, 100 years ago, if they farmed 100 acres of cropland, they were a big farmer. And today we're just a mid-sized farmer at 1,500 acres. The biggest difference is technology and the amount of acreage that you cover. If you don't keep up with technology and keep up with the changes going on in agriculture, then you're going to fall behind. And 100 years ago, you know, they raised 80 bushel corn, and now they raise 180 bushel corn. And 100 years ago, they farmed 50 acres, and a lot of people made a living that way. And today, you farm 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 acres to make the same living. It's a lot more capital intensive. There's just a world of difference. And I think that applies to every occupation in the country and just the way people live in general.
There was a lot of custom work back then. You know, farmers just helped each other. That's how everybody survived. Maybe someone had a dairy and they had milk. Maybe the next guy down the road had sheep, so you know, he supplied the mutton. Maybe the next guy down the road just wanted to raise corn, so he supplied the feed to both of them, and they just kind of swapped. The barter was very useful back then, and I think the barter system will come back.
Describe a day in the life of a farmer or farmer's wife.
Jean Benson wrote, my siblings would tell how our father would harvest corn by hand. He used a short, sword-like blade to cut the stalks, and then they would be stacked into shocks. At a later time, the ears of corn were removed. My father also used a grain cradle to harvest wheat and oats. This was a pretty large contraption, which took lots of physical strength in order to swing it through the grain. Later on, my siblings can remember when thrashing machines were used for harvesting grain. There was always a huge pile of loose straw after the thrashing took place. My brothers and sisters thought it would be great fun to play in it. There were big bins in the barn, which held large amounts of grain. When growing up, my family always said dinner for the noon meal and supper for the evening meal. I still do, even though my children now say lunch for dinner and dinner for supper. I don't know how they learn this, but I do know it sometimes gets confusing.
I know my mother-in-law, they did everything by hand. The milking, they didn't have, they didn't have any machines in the beginning. They had to milk all by hand. Then they had I don't know about the land. I think they had tractors and stuff like this, but a woman, we had to, they plowed the garden, then she had to do all the planting by hand, and they did all the canning by hand, and they made the fire in the morning in a stove, and heated up, and then they baked the bread in there and cooked, and it's unbelievable what meals they produced with a stove where you had to just put coal or wood in, I mean, now we're putting it in those electric stoves and nothing to it. We have wash machines, we wash our clothes in there. My mother-in-law, she had a old wrinkle type washer where you know, and before that they washed by hand, you know. And they boiled white clothes, and but you know, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, they went to church every Sunday, and he was so, my mother and father-in-law were so, how I say, so disciplined. He got up 5 o'clock in the morning, did the milking, 7 o'clock he came in and had breakfast, so mother then could do other things, you know, wash and do the dishes, and then at 12 o'clock he came in for lunch, and she had a big meal. And then, you know, they went back out in the field, and then 6 o'clock, she had another meal. I don't know what they really, I don't remember. I think it was leftovers they ate from lunch, you know. So a woman just worked all day on a farm to keep going, you know. Can you imagine you guys doing that? Going out and feeding all the calves, feeding the cows. I did this too. Later on I learned all how to do this, so I could do all this. Feed the bigger heifers, went out in the field and helped him chop or disc the fields. My kids, they came home from school and we had supper and had to go out in the yard and mow the yard and how in the world did I do all this? You know, in one day.
How have you diversified to keep the farm going?
So the spring houses where
At the
the
break.
spring water
It
is?
has an active spring
Right.
year round, and it's very, very cold.
Yes.
And very, very pure.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the cleanest water in the state of Ohio.
I'll
You
tell
put
you.
that down.
Can you tell us what you mean by organic farming?
Well, no chemicals, no, they don't, absolutely no chemicals, and they're fussy about how they raise it. It has to be pretty well where you're no chemicals added, or organic manure and the original crops. I mean, the crops uses fertilizer. You don't buy fertilizer now. They use lime to neutralize the soil or to keep the pH up. But they're not allowed to use chemical fertilizers like nitrogen.
Do you sell a lot of hay?
That's their main source, and they sell it to other farms, organic, and get a pretty good premium for it.
You said you sell cheese as well? Is that what you said?
They have all their milk made into cheese,
Oh, okay.
organic cheese. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what...
Yeah, it's that's basically what he sells, cheese, and he sells it at the town markets in Cleveland. He has several markets in Cleveland. He takes some supplies and he handles a lot of cheese through the farmers market, I guess you call it.
Okay, farmers market.
Yeah, the farmers market in at the square, and Fredericktown has one now started up. They were there last year, and he goes to Columbus, and well, all the cities are firing up. Even down at Kenyon, they have a market there once a week on their center square there.
Cool.
But they have a pretty good outlet for their cheese. Keeps them busy.
Oh, yeah.
Moving.
We still have the little Alice Chalmers tractor, which I think is a 1946, that we gather sap with when we make maple syrup. And I guess that's diversification. Maple syrup used to be almost a hobby when we started out, simply because we owned trees, we owned the woods. Made maple syrup when I was young. When I got married and built a house, We decided to get back into maple syrup production, and for the last 20 years it's been kind of a hobby. A year ago we cut timber to raise some money and put in a vacuum tubing operation in order to get more sap. So the maple syrup has kind of turned from a hobby into hopefully a money maker.
Grandpa Robinson that lived here, George, farmed, and then Alvy Robinson, that was my father-in-law, acquired this farm from his when he passed away. And that's how and then he bought another farm from the neighbor that was back behind us. It just over the years he accumulated more farms that they come around us that got for sale. And that's how they ended up with a lot of land. And it's always been farmed. Well, I'll take that back. Back in, let's see, 1928, they started bottling milk, and we used to deliver milk in Mount Vernon, Robinson's Valley Run Farms. Dairy farms it was. And it was Grandpa Robinson and his three sons. And my husband, Dean's dad, we bottled the milk, and then his other brother delivered the milk, and then his other brother milked the cows. So it was a family dairy, and we delivered milk. And let's see, we went out of business in 1964. They sold out, and that's when we started milking here at this farm. The inspection got really hard. Whenever you were under inspection, county inspection and state inspection both. And of course you had to keep your bacteria count down, and we always did all that. But it just got to where the small guy just couldn't do it. I mean, the bigger guy overpowered,
How many cows do you guys milk now?
What we milk? 35. About 35.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the pounds of milk you guys sell about when the bulk truck comes?
We average around 4,000 pounds.
Every other day.
Every other pickup, yeah.
We're more or less small compared to some of these larger dairies.
Where do you sell your milk to? I'm just
DFA, Dairy Farmers of America.
It's down in Newark.
Goes to Tamarack in Newark. It's a Kroger's plant.
Okay, so
yeah,
most of our milk goes to Kroger's.
Okay, that's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Because I mean, a
so
lot
when
of
you
people
buy a gallon of milk at Kroger's, you can say, the Robinsons supplied this part of it.
At that time, no soybeans. Wasn't anybody raised soybeans.
Really?
But they started raising soybeans, I would imagine, in the early 60s. I got my first combine in 68, and then I started raising soybeans.
Actually, when they started raising soybeans, the older farmers like our dads thought it couldn't be done because it'd never been done through here. Mm-hmm. And
but I can remember Dad putting soybeans out, but he cut it for hay. He mowed them and dried it, tried to, or slow dry them. Mm-hmm. And I can remember that when I was still home. But as far as harvest them, there just wasn't a harvester to harvest them. Mm-hmm. And then you had to dry them anyway. That was before bins and green bin.
You have to learn to do it yourself, a lot of things.
And you gotta buy it from your father at a low interest rate, paid over a long period of time, lots of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And have no retirement plan.
And a desire to keep the tradition going, for better or for worse.
How do you stay in business?
I guess with a little bit of luck.
A little bit of luck.
Because we could do everything right. Today, for example, they say it's supposed to pour rain. Do we really want to plant corn and have it pounded with the rain? But if it doesn't rain, now I'm a day behind. So it's just a little bit of luck. You can do everything right in farming and end up with nothing, and do everything wrong, and Mother Nature will reward you with a good crop. biggest thing, just like anything in life, is technology. Whether it's horses to cars and pickups, or little tractors to big tractors, 1-row corn planters to 12 and 24-row corn planters. Everything's bigger, faster. The technology for our engines and our equipment, our diesel motors are much more efficient. 100 horsepower tractor 40 years ago took as much fuel as a 200 horsepower tractor does today. So therefore, you're only using, basically, you can either say half as much fuel and getting twice as much done, or using the same amount of fuel and getting twice as much done. I have about $1 a gallon in the finished product. So compare that to when fuel was $3.50 to $4 a gallon, very cost effective. Now that price of fuel's back under $2, it's not near as cost effective. It's still a good product to use, simply because biodiesel alternative fuel is biodegradable. We can dump this on the ground, the water molecules will break it down, it will basically dissipate, no problem, over time. You can't do that with diesel fuel and gasoline. But biodiesel is basically, biodegradable.
Well, 'cause that's been an important part of when you said about the farm financing, the economics. Our maple syrup is a big part of it. It hasn't always been, but certainly is.
Well, when we inherited the farm, the maple syrup operation here was pretty primitive. The evaporator was a old 3 by 12 foot evaporator. You took the syrup off at the back instead of off at the front, which is now the modern way to do it. Of course, we did not have anyways near that many buckets out. Probably about 500 is the most we ever had when we first started out, until we, over the years, kept getting better equipment and more efficient evaporators, and so we could make more syrup with the same amount of equipment.
And we've grown from those 500 taps, I'd even made it less than that, till last spring, we about 5,000 taps. Yeah. So it's definitely grown. And again, the technology, the tubing instead of the buckets, and the all the equipment in the sugar house.
Reverse osmosis machine, and steam away on the evaporator, automatic takeoff of syrup. So everything's pretty automated.
How long has your family been making syrup?
Well, probably over 100 years.
Just like a normal businessman is, you got to watch your cost and try to make a product that the consumer wants and that you can make a profit on. By using the GPS, you always know where you're at on the field, so you don't have what you call overlaps, which is be overspraying or overseeding. It makes you more economical and cuts your cost, plus you're not overusing a chemical or your seed. Or when we take it out of the field to see what the moisture content of the grain is, corn is typically kept at 15.5% moisture. That's usually the moisture that it will keep over a long period of time. So we weigh out a representative sample and we pour it into the hopper of the tester, and it will read out then what our moisture is, and this corn is testing 15.6. So this corn will keep in the bin without spoiling.
The electronic age has really aided me as a farmer. From the population monitor to the GPS signal to the auto steer on the tractor, which is kind of like the computer, has aided everybody else. Computer is not necessarily a time saver, but the computer is great for rapid recall. I think it will let our minds work better because I don't have to remember all this stuff anymore. I can put it in a computer, and if I want to recall it, I can pull it back up and read it.
It's a screen that we put in our tractor, and when it's hooked up, it will give us, and we have a GPS global positioning signal antenna on our tractor. And as we plant with the planter across the field, it will outline our field, and we'll have a different corn hybrid in each half of this planter, and it will track where that hybrid is planted. And then when we put it in our combine in the fall, it will give us a readout of what the yield is each pass we go down through the field and pick in each particular spot. And then we can print out a map, and it'll show us what our yield differences are across the field, and they will vary quite a bit. And then we can go back in and look at that map and determine whether we have a drainage problem from too much moisture, or whether we have a fertility problem in that particular area. And this is another way that agriculture has changed a lot. This is one of the few items that people have in their tractors these days. Some people hook these up to a laptop computer and have it in the tractor with them, and they can keep track of. We can put in here how much fertilizer we put on per acre, the seeding rate for our corn. If we were spraying, we could put in our pesticides in here, and it's all a matter of record keeping and tracking and helping us do a better job to help us improve our operations, and also to help us be more conservation minded.
Well, the great irony is, you see the people, we have undeveloped land, right? It's some field down in Delaware County, or even up here now, right? It's developed. It's a farm. Someone for the last 150 or 200 years took what was a woods and spent, hundreds of man hours every year to grow corn or have cows or something like that. It's not undeveloped. It's the most developed land in this country.
What do you still do to help out on the farm? I know
getting a road.
I know you were disking the other day.
Well, I do what I can, and I'm busy. I mean, I might as well be. I like it, and it's been good. And wherever they need me, I'm a go-getter. Gopher, I guess, not a go-getter. Go get this and go get that. But that's my duties now.
Are you involved in any farm organizations, like maybe the Farm Bureau or the Range or something like that? You maybe want to talk about?
Farm Bureau, and 4-H, and the community. I mean, and church, of course. But I used to be more so than now, because I'm getting up in years, and you don't. But we've always been active in all the farm organizations, and the Soil and Water, and the ASC, and you name it, we've been there. But right now, I'm a Farm Bureau member, but I'm not as active as we used to be, and 4-H have kind of given it up. But yeah, we've always been active in the community. If something going on, you get involved.
Oh, just like speakers or singing, and like if somebody'd sing a solo, or they do plays. We did plays.
They had minstrel.
Oh, yeah.
They had minstrel.
Yeah, and just actually like plays and singing, and sometimes a speaker, and mostly that's basically what it was. And then, like I say, all the kids at school, we all made posters, and they'd judge them, and they would hang them. They'd hang them clear around the auditorium, and it was a very well attended because that's all that was going on much then. And
the FFA always had a watering tank.
This was at the street fair.
Had ducks in it, and had rings, and you throw. And I don't know what they give for prizes and there was, or maybe you got the duck. I don't know.
Were they real ducks?
Yeah.
Oh, real ducks.
Live ducks. Oh yeah, white ones. And that ring was, I don't know how big and round, but anyway, ring the duck. That was a money maker for FFA.
Do you like spring or fall better, or just both of them?
Oh, we just appreciate the seasons. We have all spring, summer, fall, winter, and it's great. I have a son out in California that they miss all this, and we just take it for granted, and it's a blessing because you have it all. You're see from the rebirth of every spring, life comes to life and makes you appreciate life. But they don't have it. They just have the same season year out and year round. No snow. The grandkids come in here to find snow, and we just have it and take it for granted. So, and of course they've got their seasons out there, but it's either spring or summer, and that's it, spring or summer, and no. So we appreciate where we live. We live in a pretty nice place.
My husband did not like us to be subsidized. He wanted to raise his own feed and, send his own milk his own cows, but he wanted to make a living. But you couldn't really make a living with what cost. The tractors went up in price, really went up in price. Look at tractors today, cost like $100,000. How in the world can you pay for that? So you have to raise a lot of crops, to pay for things like that. And people don't understand that. And I think in our country we're very much spoiled, having good food, all the food we want, but we don't want to pay for it, We want to have everything cheap. And that's why the government subsidizes, because the government kind of wants to keep it cheap, and so they subsidize the farmers, So we stay on the land. And you know what, hon? The farmer, I always believed, is the backbone of a country. If you take this family life away, what do you have left? They have farms out in California where they milk 100, 200, 300, 400 cows. And I bet you not one of them has a name, like the way we had it, Our cows, we almost like lived with them, They were... And that's what's going in our country. And I'm afraid it's never going to come back. Maybe you young people see things different and change the world.
It's an everyday job, 365 days a year.
And when you milk cows, it's twice a day.
Yeah.
Or some farms do milk 3 times, but we only milk twice. But you're usually in the barn, 4 to 5 hours a day, and then everything else.
Did you try milking 3 times a day?
We did.
We milked 3 times a day the year after Timmy, when G come home from school. And we did it from April till Fair Week. And we're thinking about maybe going back.
What kind of advice could you give to young people that would like to become farmers?
Make sure you can inherit the farm for the older generation, because in today's economy it's almost impossible for a young couple to go out and buy a farm and be able to pay for it.
And you'd have to really really want that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Is religion important to how you farm?
Oh, absolutely.
It'd be pretty hard to put a seed in the ground if you didn't have some faith.
Yep.
Did you ever think about getting out of farming and quitting?
No.
What was your motivation to continue?
Good place to work. Always had a job.
good place to raise kids.
Yeah.
And yes, I thought about getting out of farming.
Did your Grandpa, this is for you. Did your father ever have another job other than farming?
No.
He's always a farmer.
Yeah.
We still have a fairly traditional agricultural-based fair. I was fortunate that I only lived 3 miles away from the fairgrounds, so fair was a big part of our lives growing up. Even when I was young, too young to join 4-H, I could still go and enjoy seeing the animals and doing the games in the penny arcade where I wasted entirely too much money. But being only 3 miles away, sometimes I'd ride my horse or my pony to the fairgrounds for a practice and ride home. And a couple of years I even rode my horse to the fair and then after the fair was over rode it home rather than putting it in the pickup truck. We didn't have horse trailers or livestock trailers back in those days, so you just back the pickup truck with high racks on it up to a bank, load the animal. Sometimes I even sat on top of the horse as we were driving down the road, which is totally unsafe, but we managed to get there all right. And I've watched the facilities at the Knox County Fairgrounds improve. There used to be an old booth building and they tore it down, and in the early 60s they built the present block building. I remember when the multi-purpose building was just an open pavilion, had no walls on it, it was just a curved roof, and they would house animals underneath it. And then they worked to the point of building other barns and adding onto the walls so that it is truly a building where animals could be housed, but they can also be shown there, and it's used for a lot of different purposes. With our WD-45, Dad would take it to the fairgrounds when we had a work day, and he'd have a post hole digger on the back, and we used it to drill some of the holes for some of the beams and posts for the horse barns out at the fairgrounds back in the early 60s. We built what is now the sheep barn and the horse barn right next to it, between the sheep barn and the dairy barn. And those were horse barns, and then eventually they built 2 more barns west of there. We never used to have an arena. When we did our shows, we would go in front of the grandstand, and they'd move a piece of the end rail back, they'd unbolt it, we'd get a bunch of kids to pick it up and carry it back, and we used to do drills to music with different groups of horsemen on their horses. And we filled the grandstand doing that, and now we don't have the same crowds to watch the horse shows, but it's in a different setting.
Motivation, I guess, would be lifestyle, live in the country. You can go walk in the woods if you want to, you can ride the four-wheelers, you can buy yourself. Of course, there's always the hunting and fishing. I don't know, it's a way of life. It's just something you gotta want to do. You have to be prepared for the trials and tribulations. Things will not go well. You need a banker that understands with today's day and age what farming entails, because 50 years ago to put out 100 acres of corn maybe cost $1,000. That same 100 acres of corn today, costs $5,000. So there's a lot more money on the line, really not making any more money than they made 100 years ago on that same 100 acres. But it just takes a lot more input. The risk is much higher. So therefore you have to have a wife that's understanding, a banker that understands farming and realizes that there'll be good years, there'll be bad years, if they'll just hang with you. Things will get better. You need family to come help once in a while. For example, with the maple syrup, we used to have about 1,200 buckets that we used to dump. Well, it took a lot of help. With the tubing, we don't have near the buckets to dump, so now we've turned it from what maybe was a 5 or 6 person operation down to a 2-person operation. So you just need friends and family that are willing to come help.
How has 4-H affected your life?
Well, it taught you at an early age how to get along with kids and people, and give you responsibility at an early age. Farming teaches you a lot of responsibility because you have to care for the animals and make sure that their welfare is all their needs is met, and you're treating them in a proper fashion, just like you would like to be treated yourself or you would treat other people.
Well, my mother would say that my farming operation was a 4-H project that got out of hand. And then after graduation from college, I came home and rented some land and started raising sheep, and it's been uphill ever since.
When I was little, this field out here was a hay field, and we went out with the horses, and then the hay things that take the loose hay up and put them in the, you saw, then they would bring that wagon in, and there were 4 big hooks, which we have, all with big ropes, that came down and took, you scooped them in, you tightened it in, you pulled it, and then they either took it to the north side or the south side of the barn, and then the things went loose and dropped it, and then they fed it out of the east side of the barn, dropped it into the barnyard.
So it was loose, it wasn't...
It was loose, yeah, it was loose.
That's a fairly new phenomenon.
And yeah, baling came in after I was born. And so you'd go back out then.
The guy in Iowa came up with it in the 50s.
And I would ride back out, and the hay would come over, and it'd go down your neck. I can remember when I was little, you'd come back in, the big scoops. Sometimes the men would pull them, sometimes they'd have a horse pull them.